He thought the blind date would be a disaster, until a 7-year-old girl whispered something to him that made him see life in a completely new way. What happened next would change his heart and theirs forever. The evening light in Manhattan was fading fast, blurring the edges of the city in a pale winter haze. Inside the Larkspur Café, the air smelled of roasted coffee beans and rain-soaked pavement. Jordan Hayes sat alone at a corner table by the window, watching droplets race down the glass like quiet rivals. He looked the way people imagined billionaires always did, immaculately put together. A navy wool coat, crisp white shirt, silver watch glinting with understated confidence. But behind the appearance was a hollow silence that money could never fix. He checked his watch again. 6:12 p.m. The blind date his sister had arranged was supposed to start at 6. Jordan sighed and leaned back. The chair creaked softly under his weight. He didn't even want to be here. He'd agreed only because Pamela had insisted that he needed to live again. She was his younger sister, bright and relentless, always trying to fill his days with something other than the shadows of the past. 3 years had passed since the accident that took Claire from him. 3 years since his heart had learned what silence really meant. He could still see her face when he closed his eyes. The curve of her smile. The way she'd laughed into his chest the night before the crash. He had built empires, led teams of thousands, and yet could not rebuild himself. He stirred his untouched coffee and glanced toward the cafe entrance again. A couple entered, laughing. 2 college students wrapped in scarves. An old man reading a newspaper. No one who looked remotely like a blind date. Another 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. The waitress came by offering to refill his cup. "Waiting on someone?" she asked kindly. He smiled faintly. Apparently not anymore. By the time 2 hours had passed, the crowd had thinned, and the snow outside had thickened. Jordan slid his phone into his pocket, preparing to leave. The night had turned out exactly as he'd expected, another failed attempt to feel something again. He stood, reached for his coat, and that's when he felt it, a small tug on his sleeve. He turned. A little girl stood beside him, maybe 7 years old. Brown curls framed her small face, her big hazel eyes bright and curious. She was clutching a small pink backpack, a sketchbook pressed against her chest. "Mister," she said softly, "you look like someone who forgot how to smile." Jordan froze, startled. For a moment he just looked at her. The words struck something inside him, something fragile and buried. He started to speak but stopped, unsure how to respond. She tilted her head. "Did I say something wrong?" He shook his head, the corner of his mouth twitching. "No, not at all. I think you just surprised me." She climbed onto the empty seat across from him without asking, legs swinging beneath the table. "You looked sad," she said matter-of-factly. "So I thought maybe I should tell you." Jordan couldn't help but laugh, the first real laugh that had escaped his chest in a long time. "That's very kind of you, miss." "I'm Ivy," she said proudly. "I'm 7. I come here every day after school. My mom says I shouldn't talk to strangers, but you don't look scary." "Well, that's a relief," he chuckled. "Does your mom know you're here now?" "She's working," Ivy said, opening her sketchbook. "She works late sometimes. I just wait here for her. Mr. Leon, the man who makes coffee, keeps an eye on me." Jordan nodded, though a faint worry stirred in him. "That's very responsible of Mr. Leon," he said. "But maybe your mom shouldn't leave you alone, even in a nice place like this." Ivy shrugged, completely unbothered. "She doesn't want to. But she's a nurse helper. People need her." There was something about the way she said it, simple, unashamed, loyal, that made his throat tighten a little. She flipped through her sketchbook and showed him a page filled with colorful drawings of houses, stick figures, and one picture of a tall man with messy hair. "That's my daddy," she said. "He doesn't live with us anymore." Jordan blinked. "Oh, I see. That must be hard." "Mom says we're doing just fine. Ivy said confidently. We don't need anyone else. He smiled softly. She sounds like a strong woman. She is. Ivy grinned. Do you have a daughter? The question hit him unexpectedly. He hesitated. No, he said quietly. No, I don't. She frowned, tapping her pencil on the table. That's sad. You'd be a good dad. You listen. He laughed again, shaking his head. You think so? Yep. And you buy muffins? She said, pointing to the basket in front of him. Jordan grinned and pushed the plate toward her. Then I suppose I should share. As they talked, the coldness inside him began to thaw. She was bright and unfiltered, full of life, the kind of light that didn't realize how brightly it shone. He found himself telling her about the dog he had when he was young, how he used to sneak out of boarding school to stargaze on the roof, how he built his first app at 16 and accidentally crashed his school's computer system. Ivy giggled uncontrollably at that. You got in trouble? Big trouble, he admitted, chuckling. But it was worth it. The minutes melted away. Then, as if pulled by an invisible thread, a woman burst through the cafe doors, coat half-zipped, hair slightly messy, scrubs visible beneath. Her breath came in sharp clouds of exhaustion and relief. Ivy, she called, spotting her daughter. Mommy! Ivy jumped up and ran into her arms. The woman Stella looked flustered and embarrassed as she turned to Jordan. Her skin glowed deep bronze against the soft light, and her eyes, though tired, were kind. Oh my God, I'm so sorry if she was bothering you. Not at all, Jordan interrupted gently. She's wonderful company. Stella let out a shaky laugh. You have no idea how much she talks to strangers. I keep telling her not to. Sometimes strangers just need a little reminder to smile, he said. Stella blinked, then smiled a small, genuine smile that made her look suddenly younger. Well, I'm glad she found someone patient enough to listen. They stood there awkwardly for a moment. Stella's coat was damp from the snow. Jordan could tell she was exhausted, the kind of tired that came not just from work, but from years of carrying too much alone. I didn't know she waited here alone, he said softly. It's not safe, even if it's familiar. Stella's face flushed. I know, she exhaled. It's hard sometimes. I can't afford a babysitter and my shifts don't always end on time. The cafe staff know her, so I take the chance. He nodded slowly, sensing the quiet shame behind her words. That's a lot of pressure for one person. Stella shrugged, giving a small, weary laugh. That's single motherhood in a nutshell. Ivy tugged her sleeve. Mommy, I'm hungry. Jordan smiled at her. Then let me fix that. You both haven't eaten, have you? Stella hesitated. You don't have to, I know, he said kindly. But I want to. He signaled to the waiter, ordered a small dinner for Ivy, chicken tenders and fries and coffee for Stella. As they waited, conversation flowed more easily. Stella told him about her work at St. Agnes Clinic, the long hours, the low pay, the constant balancing act between keeping her job and being there for Ivy. She didn't complain, but Jordan could hear the fatigue behind her words. He told her about his company, Hayes Industries, though he kept the details light. He didn't mention the scale of his wealth. Something about her presence made that feel unnecessary. When Ivy's food arrived, she ate happily while humming a tune to herself. The cafe had mostly emptied by then, leaving them in a bubble of warmth and soft jazz. Stella sipped her coffee, watching her daughter fondly. She's everything, she said quietly. She saved me, you know. When her father left, I thought I wouldn't make it, but then she'd laugh or hug me, and somehow I'd find the strength again. Jordan nodded, understanding more than he expected. Sometimes, the smallest people give us the biggest reasons to keep going. Their eyes met briefly, and for a heartbeat something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. Two souls who had both lost something and were still learning to live around the emptiness. By the time Ivy finished her food, laughter had returned to their table. She showed Jordan her drawings, told him about her dream to be an artist, and insisted he promised to buy her first painting one day. He promised, without hesitation. When they finally stood to leave, Stella thanked him again. "You really didn't have to be so kind. Most people would have just walked away." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I needed the company more than she did." Snow was still falling as they stepped outside. The city lights glowed against the icy night. Jordan offered to drive them home. Stella hesitated, wary. Polite, but Ivy's hopeful expression made her nod. In the warmth of his car, Ivy soon fell asleep in the back seat, her head resting against her mother's arm. "She's a good kid," Jordan said quietly as they drove. "She really is," Stella whispered. "I just hope I can keep giving her enough." "You're already giving her the most important thing," he said. "Love. Everything else can be built from there." When they reached their neighborhood, a modest apartment complex on the Lower East Side, Stella turned to him. "Thank you again. For everything. Not just for dinner, but for being kind to her." He nodded, his eyes lingering on Ivy's sleeping face. "It was my pleasure." As she stepped out, Stella glanced back at him, smiling softly. "Maybe tonight wasn't such a bad night for you after all." He smiled faintly. "No, I suppose it wasn't." She disappeared into the building, and he sat there for a long time, watching the snow fall against the windshield. Something had shifted inside him, something he couldn't name yet, but it felt like the first crack of light after years of darkness. When he finally drove home, the silence in his penthouse didn't feel as heavy. He loosened his tie, poured a glass of water, and sank onto the couch. His phone buzzed. It was Pamela. "How did it go?" she texted. Jordan looked at the screen for a long moment, then smiled faintly to himself as he typed back, "She never showed up. But maybe I met someone better." He set the phone down, leaned back, and let the faintest smile touch his lips, the kind that a 7-year-old girl might have reminded him how to make. Morning light slipped through the tall glass windows of Jordan, Hayes's penthouse, painting golden stripes across the polished floor. The city below was already alive. Car horns, voices, the hum of ambition echoing off buildings. But Jordan stood still by the window, coffee in hand, watching it all with unusual calm. He had barely slept. The image of that little girl's smile and her mother's eyes had followed him through the night. He could still hear Ivy's tiny voice whispering, "You look like someone who forgot how to smile." Strange how a single sentence could linger longer than entire conversations. For the first time in 3 years, the thought of someone other than himself, or his ghosts, filled his morning. Without really thinking, he reached for his phone and found himself searching for St. Agnes Medical Clinic. He hesitated, wondering what on earth he was doing. But his fingers didn't stop. Within minutes, he was speaking with the clinic's administrator, confirming that Stella Johnson worked there. And before he could talk himself out of it, he left a message for her, formal, brief, and uncharacteristically impulsive. "This is Jordan Hayes. I have a position in my company that might interest. You better pay flexible hours. If you're open to a conversation, call me." He ended the call and stared at his reflection in the glass. The man looking back at him seemed different, lighter somehow. Stella called that afternoon, her voice careful but curious. "Mr. Hayes, this is Stella Johnson. You left a message about a job?" Her tone was cautious, the sound of someone who had learned not to expect favors. "Yes," Jordan said. "I run Hayes Industries. We have an opening in our Wellness and Health Support Department. I think you'd be perfect for it." "I'm not sure I understand," she said slowly. "You barely know me." He hesitated, then spoke honestly. "You said last night that you barely get time with your daughter. I have the resources to change that. Consider it an opportunity, not charity." There was a long pause. He could almost hear her wrestling with pride on the other end. Finally, she said, "You're offering me a job because I happen to sit next to you in a café?" Jordan smiled faintly. "Maybe I just believe good people deserve a break." 3 days later, Stella walked through the glass doors of Hayes Industries, a 30-story tower of steel and light. Her black curls framed her face neatly, her best blouse pressed, her posture uncertain but proud. She carried the quiet dignity of someone who'd worked Hard all her life, but never expected luxury. Jordan met her in the lobby himself. "Welcome to Hayes Industries," he said warmly. "Don't worry, we'll make sure the hours work for you and Ivy." She smiled shyly. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. I'll do my best not to disappoint you." "I don't doubt that for a second," he said, and meant it. Within weeks, Stella had become one of the most dependable people in his company. She wasn't just efficient. She brought humanity into a place that had long felt mechanical. She treated everyone from executives to janitors with the same kindness. The staff adored her. The halls where people used to whisper nervously when Jordan passed now carried laughter. Somehow her warmth softened even his reputation. And every afternoon around 3, the elevator doors would open, and Ivy would step out, her curls bouncing, her backpack slightly open. Holding a new drawing for Mr. Jordan, she always marched into his office, as if she owned it. "Hi, Mr. Jordan," she'd chirp, placing her latest masterpiece on his desk. "It's you and Mommy and me, see? You're the tall one because you have rich man shoes." He'd laugh every single time. "Rich man shoes?" "Yeah," Ivy said seriously. "They click when you walk." He kept every one of her drawings. By the end of the month, one wall of his office looked more like a kindergarten art display than a billionaire's workspace. Days turned into months, and what began as gratitude grew into something unspoken and deep. Jordan found excuses to visit her department, sometimes to ask about employee wellness reports, other times just to share a few minutes of easy conversation. Stella, though professional, couldn't hide the faint smile that tugged at her lips whenever he appeared. They spoke about work at first, but gradually, their conversations shifted to childhood memories, books, favorite foods, the strange ways life tested people. There was comfort there, them simple, unforced, and real. One afternoon, Pamela stopped by the office unannounced. She had been traveling for weeks and hadn't seen her brother in months. When she walked into Jordan's office and found Ivy sitting cross-legged on his desk, coloring, she froze. Hi?" she said, amused. Ivy looked up. "Hi. Are you Mr. Jordan's sister?" Pamela laughed. "I am." "And who might you be, Miss Bossy Boots?" "I'm Ivy. Mommy works here now." That evening, Pamela met Stella for the first time. Warm handshake, polite smiles, easy laughter. Later, when the two women spoke privately in the hallway, Pamela said softly, "Thank you." Stella frowned. "For what?" "For giving my brother back his smile." Stella blinked, unsure how to respond. "I didn't do anything." "Oh, I think you did," Pamela said knowingly. That night, Stella showed up at Jordan's office with a covered dish. "I made something for you," she said. He looked surprised. "For me? You've been working late." "It's just pasta," she said quickly, almost embarrassed. He motioned toward the conference table. "Then let's have dinner." It was the simplest meal. Pasta, a small salad, and the sound of quiet laughter echoing between them. But it felt like something sacred. The following weekend, Stella and Ivy came over to his mansion for dinner. Ivy had begged to see where Mr. Jordan lived. What started as a one-time gesture became a ritual. Every Saturday evening they came over. Sometimes for dinner, sometimes for a picnic in his garden when the weather turned warmer. Jordan started to look forward to those days more than anything else. The mansion, once sterile and cold, filled with laughter, warmth, and the smell of home-cooked food. He found himself waiting for Ivy's chatter echoing down the hall, for Stella's quiet laughter in his kitchen. And one evening, when Ivy fell asleep on the couch mid-cartoon, they found themselves alone on the porch, wrapped in the quiet of the night. The city lights stretched out before them, soft and distant. Stella leaned against the railing, eyes following the skyline. "You still love her, don't you?" she said quietly. Jordan looked at her, startled. "Who? Your fiancé? The one you lost?" He said nothing at first, then nodded slowly. "I do, I thought. If I ever felt something again, it would be wrong. Like I'd be betraying her." Stella turned to him, her voice soft. "Love isn't betrayal. It's proof you survived." He looked at her, eyes glistening faintly. "I thought I didn't deserve to feel anything again." "Maybe love isn't about forgetting," she whispered. "Maybe it's about learning to smile again." The words lingered in the night air, gentle but powerful. They stood there in silence for a long while, the sound of the city humming softly beneath them. Then, almost unconsciously, their hands brushed on the railing. There was a soft, accidental touch that felt anything but casual. For a heartbeat, they didn't move. Their eyes met, the world narrowing to that fragile, charged moment. Jordan leaned closer, his breath mingling with hers. And for the first time, Stella didn't pull away immediately. But just as their lips nearly met, she stepped back, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't," she said. "You're my boss, and I can't lose my job." He exhaled, steadying himself. "You won't, not because of me." She shook her head. "It's not that simple. People talk. I've worked too hard to be defined by anyone else again." He looked at her for a long moment, understanding, patient. "Then I'll wait," he said softly, "as long as it takes." Her eyes glistened, but she said nothing more. She just smiled in a sad, grateful smile, and turned toward the house to wake Ivy. Jordan stayed where he was, the night air cool against his skin. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of what he felt. He wasn't afraid of the ache in his chest or the pull toward something new. Because this time it didn't come from pain. It came from hope, quiet, patient, alive. And somewhere inside him, a small voice, a 7-year-old's whisper, seemed to echo again. "You look like someone who forgot how to smile." He smiled, then not forced, not polite, but full, real, alive. The weeks that followed carried a quiet rhythm. Stella worked, Jordan led, Ivy colored, Pamela teased, and life somehow began to feel right again. There were no declarations, no promises. Just small, beautiful moments that built something stronger than either of them had expected. For Jordan, every sunrise felt different now. He found himself waking up not to the emptiness of loss, but to the possibility of love reborn slow, fragile but real. It had been a year since. Stella and Ivy had become a regular part of Jordan Hayes' life. The city's seasons had shifted, and winters, gray replaced by the soft blooms of spring, the streets below alive with energy and color. The once cold halls of Hayes Industries were now familiar with laughter, quiet camaraderie, and the soft patter of little feet that always found their way to his office. Jordan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse that Saturday morning, watching the sun glint off the East River. His reflection stared back at him. Cleaner, softer around the edges, the shadows that had haunted him for years finally lifting. The apartment had changed too. Drawings from Ivy covered the refrigerator, colorful paintings adorned the walls, and the aroma of home-cooked meals lingered, subtle but persistent. Today was special. Ivy's birthday. 7 years old. Jordan had insisted on making it a celebration. A small picnic in Central Park with balloons, cupcakes, and laughter. Pamela was coming as well. He parked the luxury SUV near the park entrance, taking in the sight of Stella kneeling on a blanket, spreading out sandwiches and juice boxes while Ivy ran ahead, chasing the fluttering ribbons of balloons tied to the picnic basket. Stella looked up and caught his gaze. She smiled, but there was something deeper in her eyes. Gratitude, relief, and the hint of something tender. "Hey," Jordan said as he stepped closer, brushing a loose strand of hair from his face. "Hey yourself," Stella replied, a smile tugging at her lips. "You made it." "Of course I made it. This is a special day," he said, kneeling to greet Ivy, who shrieked in delight and wrapped her small arms around his neck. "I missed you," she exclaimed. "And I brought the balloons." Jordan laughed, holding her at arm's length to spin her gently around. "Looks like the party's already started." Pamela arrived shortly after, her arms full of gifts. "Look at all of you," she exclaimed. "Jordan, you've turned into a regular family man." Jordan grinned faintly. "Seems like life has its way of surprising you." The day was filled with laughter, games, and quiet moments that felt monumental. Jordan watched Stella with Ivy, the gentle way she tucked a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear, the soft encouragement when Ivy got frustrated during a balloon game. There was a rhythm, a pattern to their lives now, one he had never thought he would experience. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue over the park, Jordan found a quiet moment to speak to Stella. "Do you know," he began, "I never imagined that one evening in a café could change everything." Stella tilted her head. "I thought that was your blind date." He smiled, a deep, real smile this time. "She never showed up. But I met someone better." Her eyes softened. "You mean Ivy and me?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Both of you. You reminded me what it's like to laugh again, to care again. You reminded me to live." Stella reached out and took his hand briefly. "I never expected any of this. Life has been so hard for so long. But you made it easier." Jordan's gaze held hers for a long moment. "There's something I've been meaning to ask." Her heart skipped. "Yes?" He took a slow breath, steadying himself. "Would you go on a proper date with me? Just the two of us? Stella blinked, a mixture of surprise and happiness washing over her features. A proper date? Yes, Jordan said, his voice soft but firm. No work, no Ivy, just you and me. I want to take you out. She paused, thinking. Then her lips curved into a smile that lit her face. I'd like that. Their first date was quiet and intimate. They walked along the streets of Manhattan, dimly lit by the glow of street lamps, stopping at a small, elegant Italian restaurant that Stella had never dared to enter on her own. Conversation flowed easily, laughter punctuating the night like small fireworks. They shared a bottle of wine, spoke of their dreams, their fears, and Jordan finally admitted the depth of his grief. How losing Claire had nearly shattered him, how Ivy and Stella's presence had slowly brought him back. Stella listened quietly, her hand brushing his across the table. You've carried a lot, she said softly, and yet you're still here, still kind, still human. Jordan smiled, a faint flush creeping across his face. You taught me that. By the end of the evening, they walked along the river, the reflection of the city lights dancing in the water. Jordan paused, taking her hand in both of his. Thank you for trusting me, he whispered. And this time, when he kissed her, it was deliberate, tender, full of everything he had held back for years. Stella didn't pull away. She leaned into the kiss, letting herself feel the warmth she had tried to deny. The city around them melted into the background, leaving just the two of them, their hearts learning to beat together. Months passed and their relationship deepened. The weekends they had once spent as friends now carried the soft hum of intimacy, quiet, dinners at the mansion, picnics with Ivy, long walks through Central Park. Jordan and Stella discovered the comfort of companionship without urgency, of friendship blossoming into love. Pamela, ever vigilant, watched with joy as her brother began to truly live again. One sunny Saturday, she joined them for a picnic, helping Ivy tie her shoes and laughing with Stella over sandwiches. She whispered to Jordan later, I think you've finally found your people. You've finally found your home. 6 months later, Stella's birthday arrived. Jordan had planned something extraordinary. A private rooftop, dinner with soft jazz playing, fairy lights twinkling above, and their closest friends. Steph and Pamela present. As Stella arrived, Jordan dropped to one knee. Ivy ran forward, holding a small velvet box. Stella, he began, voice steady but full of emotion, you taught me how to live again. You and Ivy gave me a reason to open my heart, to love again. Will you marry me? Tears glistened in Stella's eyes. She looked around at their friends, then down at Ivy, who clapped excitedly. Finally, her gaze returned to Jordan. Yes, she exclaimed, her voice breaking with emotion. Applause erupted around them. Laughter, tears, and congratulations filled the night air. Jordan slipped the ring onto her finger, the diamond sparkling like the city lights around them. 1 year later, the wedding arrived, grand, glamorous, and unforgettable. The chapel was adorned with white lilies, soft drapes, and golden accents. Friends, family, and Pamela were all present, each witness to the culmination of years of loss, healing, and hope. Ivy walked down the aisle as the flower girl, her little dress twirling as she scattered petals. Jordan stood at the altar, looking at Stella with unshakable love in his eyes. When Stella approached, her smile radiated everything she had been through. Resilience, happiness, and love finally realized. I can't believe this is happening, Pamela whispered to Ivy. Me neither, Ivy said softly. But I'm happy. Really happy. Vows were exchanged, promises made, and the kiss that sealed their union was long, tender, and full of all the moments they had lived together. Laughter, tears, and the quiet magic of trust. The honeymoon followed. Jordan insisted that Ivy come with them. We're a family now, he said. They traveled along the coast, staying in seaside villas, walking on sun-drenched beaches, and laughing like they had no past burdens to carry. Ivy ran freely, collecting shells, drawing pictures in the sand, and calling out to her new family with pure joy. Stella and Jordan watched her, hands intertwined, hearts full. The vacation was more than a honeymoon. It was a declaration of what they had created together, a family bound not just by love, but by understanding and patience. 6 months after the wedding, Stella discovered she was pregnant. Jordan was beside himself with happiness, pacing the apartment with a mixture of disbelief and elation. Ivy jumped up and down, hugging both of them at once. Finally, the day arrived. Stella gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Jordan held his son in his arms, awe and love radiating from him. Ivy hugged her little brother and whispered, Now I have a baby brother too. Jordan looked at his family, Stella, Ivy, the baby in his arms, and for the first time in years he felt complete. His heart, once frozen by grief, now beat with joy, warmth, and the fullness of love he had thought lost forever. That night, after the children slept, he stood on the balcony of the mansion, cradling his newborn son, Stella leaning against his shoulder. He whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else 3 years ago. "I thought my life ended in a cafe. But then a little girl whispered me back to life." Stella smiled, resting her head against him. "And you listen," she said. Jordan held her close, the city lights twinkling below, the night alive with promise. Sometimes love doesn't arrive when you expect it. It finds you when you've stopped looking. And in that moment, Jordan knew he had finally found it. The love, the family, and the life he had been waiting for all along. Thank you for being part of Whispers of Hope. Your love and support mean more than words. Together we're spreading light, one whisper at a time.